Inside a well-furnished room, two people sat facing each other. One of them was Nathan, a man who was in his late 50s. He was currently wearing a loose brown shirt and a pair of white trousers. His eyes were sharp as he gazed at the other person that was seated across him in the room. This man seemed older than Nathan, considering that there were several more wrinkles on his face as compared to Nathan, whose hair had just began turning gray. This man had sharp features. From the looks of it, he was a handsome man during his youth, as he still maintained a certain charm even though he was already old. This man was wearing a green t-shirt accompanied by loose gray sweatpants. Just from the looks of it, one could tell that he was a man who liked to be free from all things that would cause his life to be boring. Too bad that he was born in a family where each and everyone's performance mattered the most when it came to the matters concerning authority and the ability to speak and get whatever one wanted to get. This man was called Martin. He was Nathan's older brother, as well as Anita and Anne's eldest sibling. "What is it, Nathan? You know that I have got a lot of things to do at the moment. So, I would appreciate if you could tell me whatever it is that you wanted to see me for as soon as possible so that I can get going." Martin spoke with an impatient tone. "Come on, brother. You were saying that you were busy with something when you were sleeping when I asked to see you." Nathan looked at his brother, disbelief clear in his eyes. "What? You don't think that sleeping is something that can make a person to be considered being busy?" Martin asked with narrowed eyes. "That can be considered if this was nighttime. But now, it's only 2 p.m. It's still during the day. So, you should at least be doing something right now. At the end of the day, this is the first date of the month of September," Nathan stated. "You should know that the weather has already began changing. We have just experienced summer, the temperatures were quite high. But now that autumn has come in, the temperatures have already began dropping. So, let me take a rest. Hurry up with whatever you want to say so that I can go to sleep," Martin complained. They were currently in his house that was located at the east end of the family manor. He didn't even want to leave the house because he felt that he couldn't handle the changes in the weather conditions. "Humph." Nathan snorted before he finally spoke about what had brought him to see his brother. "I have been trying to contact father and uncle recently, since Saturday. But all of them are turning me down for the meeting." "What did you do to make them stop coming to see you when you requested their audience?" Martin questioned as he eyed Nathan. From what he knew, both his father and uncle would definitely not refuse to seeing any of them. But the condition for that was that they had to be having something urgent that would actually need their intervention. Otherwise, there would be a punishment that would come in the moment that the two elderlies found that they were being disturbed. Unlike the old fogies that were found in the fantasies, who would spend a lot of time in seclusion to increase their strength, the elders of the Jesda family were different. They were the ones that were in charge of the main family businesses that were either in or out of the country. So, they didn't like to be disturbed. Although they were already old, they would only stop working when they had finally found someone that was going to replace them. Though, they would supervise their inheritors to make sure that he was on the right track before they finally retire. Normally, by such a time where they were already in their early or late 80s and some in their late 90s, they would have already retired. But, there was something that had happened a few decades back in that the elders decided that they would not leave the reins of the family to the generation that came after them. In other words, it was only the second generation that came after them that would take over the family. So, they had been worked themselves off till this moment where they were supposed to have retired already. "I haven't done anything to irk them at all. As long as I can remember, there is nothing that I did that is not according to the family rules," Nathan stated. Martin looked at him with squinted eyes. Of course he didn't believe in such a blatant lie to his face. From the way that he knew this brother of his, he was someone that would do anything to get whatever he wanted. And considering that recently, there were many people who had been competing for the position of the family head that had decided not to compete further, leaving only two people, Nathan's son and Anita's son. Though, he decided not to talk about this as it would end up extending the time that he was going to spend awake. "Alright, just tell me what you were going to tell them so that I can see if it's something that I can ask father to come out and handle." Martin waved his hand as he stated. Nathan's lips twitched at Martin's words. Just from the way that he was saying things, it could easily be thought that he usually came to speak nonsense to his father and uncle. He had no time to waste on other things like that as he had a long list of things to do so that he could get whatever power he wanted. "I wanted to talk about my son, Arthur. He was attacked and beaten to that extent by Jonathan. Now, not only has my son become a cripple who we don't know if he would ever be able to walk again, he has already have a problem with his mind due to the harsh beating that he received," Nathan stated. The more that he spoke about the situation, the more angry he got at that. The only ticket that he had to gain power, control over the whole Jesda family, had suddenly been torn. It was now a wonder whether it could be fixed or not. Martin looked at Nathan, doubt clear in his eyes. He then spoke, "Are you sure that you are not mistaking Jonathan for someone else?" "What do you mean, brother? This is the information that I have gotten from my son who has just woken up not long ago," Nathan retorted with a frown on his face. "And you just said that your son is having a problem with his mind. Could it be that he mistook Jonathan for someone else?" Martin questioned further. "I said that there was a problem with his mind, but who the heck said that he is having a problem with his memory?" Nathan shouted as he pointed his finger at Martin. "Come on, I'm just trying to make sure that things are on the right track here. Furthermore, why would Jonathan do something that is completely against the family rules and leave all the evidence there is to find?" Martin shrugged as he replied before he asked again. "Although he just woke up, he could still remember that I'm his father. And when I asked about who was behind the condition that he was in, he stated that it was Jonathan. How do you even know that Jonathan thought that Arthur would be in a coma forever and never wake up?" Nathan practically roared at this moment. He was even regretting over the fact that he had actually come over to ask for his unreliable brother's help. Had there been any other choice, he would have chosen that rather than coming over to try convincing his brother about the truth. Martin looked at Nathan with suspicion. He was wondering if this was a way that Nathan had devised so that he could clear the way for his son towards the position of the family head. According to the family rules, as long as one didn't want to become the family head, then that person would never be allowed to get into that position. And if a person went against the family rules, that person would also not be allowed to take over the position. Clearly, all the other previous competitors had stated that they didn't want to compete for the position of the family head any longer. So, the moment that they declared so, they were no longer qualified for that position again. "Are you trying to use the family rules to eliminate our nephew out of the competition? You know that there would be investigation that would be carried out to find out the truth behind the matter. So, if they find that you were trying to accuse Jonathan about this, you would face severe punishment," Martin stated. "I know the family rules all too well, brother. There is no need for you to go ahead and remind me about them. It has already been over 50 years since I began recounting the family rules," Nathan stated. At the same time, there was a tinge of hatred that flashed in his eyes. "I know the family rules all too well, brother. There is no need for you to go ahead and remind me about them. It has already been over 50 years since I began recounting the family rules," Nathan stated. At the same time, there was a tinge of hatred that flashed in his eyes. The family rules, this was something that had prevented him from taking over the position of the family head. It was just these family rules situation that had prevented his generation from ever taking over as the head of the family. And the reason as to why he couldn't take or compete for the position of the family head was because of Anne. This was the reason as to why he hated her to the core, although she was his sister. She was the reason as to why he had failed to obtain something that he had been dreaming of for a very long period of time. This was the reason as to why he had resorted to using his son to get the position of the family head. Although previously, his son had said that he wasn't interested in the position. But in the end of it all, he had managed to make that stupid son of his agree to become the family head, then leave everything for him to handle. But now, it was as if the heavens were against him being the leader of the family. Not only had the chance gone away due to something that didn't even matter to him, but the current one was also being snatched away. He wasn't going to accept something like that. This was the reason as to why he had decided that he had to make sure that he would utilize the family rules to make sure that Jonathan would no longer be eligible to compete for the position of the family head. In this way, even if his son was still a cripple, since he was the only person in the family who was eligible to taking the position, then, his father and uncle would have no choice but to hand over the position to him. He himself would volunteer to help him in making the decisions concerning the family. In this way, he could manage to assure the old men that there would be no problems in the family in the future. Martin seemed not to have been convinced by whatever Nathan was saying. He looked at his younger brother and said, "Have you tried investigating so that you can find out if whatever your son told you was actually the truth, or he was trying to lie his way out?" "Brother, just from the way that my son was speaking about Jonathan, it was clear enough that he was quite scared about Jonathan. It was obvious that he had undergone a trauma in the hands of Jonathan, who is supposedly his cousin," Nathan stated without even thinking about it. He was ready to push things forward as long as they proved to be effective. And if they found that whatever Arthur was saying was utter nonsense, then he would simply push the blame to Arthur. To him, Arthur, who didn't have any type of hunger for power, was not a person that he would consider a son. Had it not been for the fact that he wanted to utilize him to acquire more power, he would have completely cared about nothing that happened to him. On seeing that his brother was quite serious about whatever he was talking about, Martin could only shake his head before saying, "Okay then, I will try to contact father and see if he can arrange for a meeting between us. In this way, you can present all the information that you have that is related to the issue where Jonathan attacked your son." "Thank you, brother. I really do appreciate your help." Nathan finally revealed a smile on his face as he thanked Martin. "Whatever, I'm going back to sleep." Martin waved hands as he got out of his seat, ready to go back to his bedroom to enjoy his sleep that had been interrupted by his younger brother. "When are you going to contact father, brother?" Nathan hurriedly asked. He wasn't willing to give Jonathan any more time that he could utilize to do more things. He had been doing things that had made him suspicious recently. But all the same, since he had not utilized anything from the family, Nathan didn't want to engage him or ask whatever he was doing. At the end of the day, Jonathan had his own freedom as a person, even as a member of the Jesda family. "I will contact father tomorrow morning," Martin replied lazily before he began working towards his bedroom. "Brother, you have to do this today. This is something urgent. If you delay any longer, then perhaps Jonathan might use this chance to cover all the tracks and evidence that would point towards him." Nathan rushed towards Martin and pulled him by his hand as he tried to prevent him from entering back into the bedroom. He knew that, the moment that Martin entered the bedroom, it would be a difficult task to bring him out. "Can't you wait a little longer? I want to sleep already," Martin complained. Just before Nathan could say anything, his phone rang. He followed his brows as he wondered who it was that was calling him at this moment. According to his plans and schedules, there was supposed to be nobody calling him during the weekends, especially on Sunday that he had dedicated to his rest. He was forced to release Martin's arm as he tried to pick up the phone from his trouser pocket. When he looked at the person who was calling him, he found out that it was his personal secretary. This was actually the last person that he had been expecting to be calling him at such a time. After all, as a personal secretary, he definitely knew about his schedule and arrangements that he made on a daily basis. With disgruntlement, received the call before asking, "What is it that you call me now? Don't you know that today is on a weekend, and I'm supposed to be free from all the work duties?" "Boss, there is a problem with all the laptops and computers that have your email." A panicked male voice came through the earpiece of the phone. "What do you mean by saying there's a problem? Can't you be specific about what you're trying to talk about?" Nathan grumbled. "What I meant to say was that all the computers and the laptops that have been signed in or are using your email account are kind of malfunctioning. They are revealing all the information that was supposed to be kept a secret." The person on the other end of the line responded. Nathan's brows furrowed deeper when he heard that. He turned his attention to his brother so that he could excuse himself, only to find that this brother of his had already slipped into the bedroom. Shaking his head, he decided to put aside the matter concerning Jonathan and deal with the most urgent one. He had kept a lot of secrets on his computers and laptops. But all of them were the ones that only he and his personal secretary knew about. Furthermore, there were even some of them that only he could access. But now that he was being informed that there were some laptops and computers, as long as they were using his email account, were malfunctioning. "I'll be calling you back when I'm free in about 5 minutes. Immediately after he said that, he ended the call and exited his brother's house. He was practically rushing towards his own house so that he could confirm if whatever he was being told was true. Since all the laptops and computers that had used his email were malfunctioning, then that simply meant that even the one that he was having in his house could malfunction as well. When he got into his house, he headed straight into his bedroom where his laptop was placed, and just as he had been told before, he found the laptop that he had left in sleeping mode was currently on. And to make matters worse, whatever was being displayed on the screen of the laptop was something that he usually kept as a secret. It was the information about a certain transaction that he had been hiding for a long time now. But all the records were flashing through the screen of the laptop again and again. This made his heart thump crazily. Just thinking about all this information being revealed to another person, it gave him a heck of a scare. He hurriedly took the laptop and tried to exit the information that was being displayed by the document reader. But no matter what button he pressed on the laptop, nothing responded at all. Left with no other choice, he could only smash the laptop to make sure that it had gone off. This was because even the power button had failed to work. Wiping their small beads of sweat that had already accumulated on his forehead, Nathan couldn't help but wonder to himself, what is going on? Wiping their small beads of sweat that had already accumulated on his forehead, Nathan couldn't help but wonder to himself, what is going on? This was something that had never happened to him before. And neither had he ever heard about this happening to anyone that he knew of. So, could it be a certain virus that targeted his email account? But that didn't make any sense to him. After all, if there was actually a virus that could affect something as long as it was linked to the email, then this was an extremely dangerous virus that had to be taken care of as soon as possible. The good thing is that I have saved all the important information in this laptop inside my email. This should help me in recovering them at the time that I will need them. Nathan muttered to himself after releasing a deep sigh. But just then, he thought of a crucial fact that he had almost forgotten about. The fact that only his secrets were being shown after this so-called virus appeared in his email account. He narrowed his eyes as he thought of something. Could it be that there's someone who is currently targeting me? Who could it be? Nathan asked himself as he tried to think of anybody who had the enmity with him, and had the ability to do what was being done right now. But no matter what he thought about, he couldn't find anything interesting that pointed to a certain someone. In the end, he was left guessing who the person that was targeting him was. Although he could do anything to get the power that he so wished to get, there were some times that he had to do the opposite of creating enemies. That was the time when he first the people who were at a level higher than him. He wouldn't mind making an enemy out of a person who was at the same level as him because he believed that he would surpass that person very soon. But someone who was at a higher level than him, that was a person who he would try to befriend so that he could get all the benefits that could be gotten from that person. That was his way of doing things. If you don't support him and you are at the same level as him, then you better be ready to be his enemy. And if you are at a level higher than him, then you better get ready to be used. Just as he was immersed in his thinking, his phone rang again, bringing him out of his stupor. He looked at the screen of the phone and noticed that it was his personal secretary that was calling again. The laptop incident had caused him to forget about the time that he informed his personal secretary to call him about 5 minutes later. Now that he thought about it, he hurriedly picked up the call. "I like computers and laptops, they are still malfunctioning?" he questioned the moment that he received the call. "Yes, boss. As long as the laptop or computer was connected to the power source or had its battery with enough power, they were all turned on," his personal secretary replied. Nathan felt his heartbeat racing. Just thinking about the fact that all the computers or laptops that had his information, as long as they were linked to his email account, they would be showing several types of information. If it so happened that his competitors found the information that could be used against him, then he was going to be in a very deep hot soup. Lucky for him though, it was on a Sunday and all the laptops and computers that were linked to his email were in the office. Since he himself took the weekends off, he made sure that all his subordinates took the Sunday as a day off. But of course, this did not involve those who were supposed to be in charge of security. "Then what the FCK are you waiting for? Go ahead and smash all the computers and laptops so that they can stop displaying that serious information," Nathan yelled at his phone. The personal secretary on the other hand was frightened at his boss's shout. But then again, when he finally registered what his boss was informing him to do, he couldn't help but ask, just to confirm that what he had heard was correct. "But boss, if I smash all the computers and laptops here, then there's a lot of information that will be lost. This itself will hinder the work's progress," the personal secretary stated. "Does it look like it matters to me? Do as I said. As long as there is a computer or a laptop that is malfunctioning, then smash it into pieces so that it can stop working. That piece of information being revealed to others, more so my competitors, will cost me a lot more than just losing a few pieces of information that will daily our work," Nathan stated angrily. "Okay boss. I'll do that right away," the personal secretary replied hurriedly. "Then what are you still talking for? FC can destroy those things before they continue displaying any further information," Nathan yelled again. Toot, toot, toot. The call was finally ended and Nathan could finally breathe. He didn't even know that he had been holding his breath for a while now as he waited for the results from his personal secretary. "I think this should be enough to deal with the problem for now. The only problem that is currently there is on how to deal with the person who is trying to mess with me. I don't know who this person is, but that person knows who I am. This is so problematic for me. Not only is this person my enemy, but this person has great expertise in that. They can get the information that I have been keeping as a secret for a very long time. It seems that I will have to deal with all my enemies if possible, so that I can remove all the possible dangers that are there. I don't want several people coming after me when I'm facing something else." Nathan muttered to himself before turning his gaze to the phone in his hand that was currently vibrating. Looking closely, he saw that there was a message. He frowned as he opened it because he found that there was no information about the sender being displayed on the screen of his phone. "Hello there, Nathan. I guess you have gotten the heads up from me. But don't worry too much, I won't be revealing any information about you to any of your enemies. So I think you can be at ease. After all, you're only going to deal with one enemy, and that is obviously me. So, you better focus your attention from me and forget about any other enemy that you are having. That is simply because I am more than enough to deal with you. So, as a meeting gift, I would like to present you with a present of not being able to use your email account. That means that anything that is related to your email account will be hacked by me. And don't try using the other email accounts that you are having, because I know about them already. So for now, even completely forget about the information that you have saved in your email accounts. Perhaps you might even consider forgetting about using any electronic that is linked to your email. That is all for now, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. P.S. Your worst nightmare yet. The moment that Nathan finished reading the message that he had received from no sender at all, the phone that he was holding in his hand began blinking in and out. Then, a document opened all of a sudden. The moment that Nathan's eyes fell on the document and he read the first sentence, he felt he was running down his spine. The information that was being displayed on the screen at that moment was the communication that he had been having with Spider. Not only did it consist of the message that he had asked Spider to do something for him, but also a bank statement that showed the transfer that had occurred between the two of them. Nathan knew that, the moment that this information was seen by his father or uncle, he would be in deep trouble. After all, this was the information about the communication between him and the assassin known as Spider during the time that he had been hiring him, so that he could assassinate Jonathan. In the end, Spider failed the mission just like all the other previous assassins had failed. Although he was frustrated at this fact, he knew that it was a difficult task to deal with Jonathan without leaving a trace behind. Nathan slumped onto the bed. Although he has not done anything tiresome, he all of a sudden felt very tired. He just wanted to rest. Due to the pressure that he was currently facing, he decided to give in and he fell asleep a moment later with a thought that he would think of a solution to handle the situation when he woke up. What he didn't know was the fact that this would be the biggest mistake that he had ever done ever since he entered his room. And what was to be expected, it was definitely regret and much more. "Nathan, come out right now." An infuriated shout came out outside Nathan's bedroom. Nathan, who was currently sleeping due to the mental tiredness that he had experienced, suddenly bolted out of his bed. His expression was wary at that time because he was not expecting that someone would dare to enter his bedroom. This was the room that even his wife and children could not enter. So, for someone to get here, this was a blatant provocation as he had clearly stated that nobody was supposed to be here, especially it being on a Sunday that he was supposed to be taking his rest. He was currently furious. Not only had there been someone who claimed to be his worst nightmare yet, but there were even others in the family that dared to go against him like this. "How dare you try entering my room like you own this place? Who do you think you are so that you can simply come here as you wish to disturb my rest?" Nathan shouted at the door that was still shut at this moment. He was sure that had it not been for the fact that he had locked the door before he slept, then the other party might really have entered the room. "Come out right now, Nathan. You be *****. The other party did not seem to be scared by Nathan's shout at all. In fact, the other party seemed to have been even more enraged at the fact that Nathan was inside the room. Bang! Bang! There were fierce hits on the door. It was clear that the person on the other side of the door intended to break the door so that he could enter. But the doors that were present in the Jesda Manor were not that easy to be broken. Nathan's fury was even more inflamed when the other party knocked on the door as if he wanted to break it. Wasting no time at all, he rushed towards the door with a murderous intention. The next moment, he opened the door and looked at the person that was standing there with a ferocious gaze. "Do you think that I'm so easy to bully, Simon? You left your house, came all this way to come and disturb my rest. Don't expect that you will get out of here intact." Nathan practically roared with reddened eyes that showed just how maddened he was. "You dare to talk to me in such a manner when you are the one that was involved in the murder of my son? Did you think that I wouldn't know that you were the one that sent the assassins after him?" Simon shouted. Simon was a middle-aged man with a few streaks of gray on his head. He had deep brows, brown eyes and was a man with a tall stature. He was currently wearing a sweatpants and a vest. This clearly indicated that he had come here the moment that he confirmed or got the information that it was Nathan that was involved in the murder of his son. It was already morning at this moment. Nathan had slept through the day till the following morning. He had not even realized that it was already almost 8 in the morning. Nathan was stunned the moment that he heard what Simon had said. Simon was his cousin, he was from another line, different from his father's, but all the same, the two of them were cousins. Nathan had clearly not expected that Simon would get the information about the assassin that he had sent a few years ago to kill his son. This was one of the ways that he had utilized to get rid of the competition that his son was going to face. He had made sure that he was meticulous in whatever he did and didn't reveal any kind of information that would point the incident back to him. Now, the question that was ringing in his mind was, how did Simon find the information about the assassin that he had sent over? This is getting frustrating. First, it was the hacking of my email account that led to several pieces of information being released. And now, here is Simon who has suddenly known about something that has remained in the dark for over a decade now. Could this be the work of that person? Or is it that Simon just so happened to get the information at the moment that all the electronics that were registered with my email malfunctioned? Nathan began questioning himself. But it seemed that the other party wasn't going to give him the time to continue musing about how the information was revealed. Today, if I don't kill you, then I'm not Simon Jesda, Simon shouted, his eyes reddened with anger. He had clearly lost his sense of reason and completely ignored that there were family rules that prohibited the fights between members of the Jesda family. The next moment, he had already managed to tackle the absent-minded Nathan into the ground. What followed were blows that came from every angle that could be thought of. Simon wasn't sure about the information that he had received that morning yet. Though, knowing Nathan's character, he thought that this was something possible. So, he had come over angrily. Though he was angry at that time, it was not to the extent that he would attack the moment that he saw Nathan. He had deliberately put on an act that he was angry so that he could see Nathan's reaction. And the moment that Nathan showed the stunned expression when he mentioned the fact that it was Nathan who had sent the assassin, then he had confirmed that it was something that was related to Nathan. What Simon didn't know was the fact that, if this was any other time, Nathan would not have shown such a reaction at all. In fact, he might use the accusation that was placed on him to find a way to make sure that Simon suffered. But due to the changes that had suddenly occurred and he was in an unfavorable position in a long period of time, then he had lost his composure. But none of that mattered to the completely enraged Simon. He was stronger than Nathan. And so, he managed to land several blows on Nathan's face the moment that he brought him to the ground. Nathan finally came out of his reverie the moment that he felt the pain that came from the blows that was receiving. Although he might not be as strong as Simon, that didn't mean that he was weak as we. So, the moment that he came back to his senses, he also began wrestling with Simon. The two engaged in a brutal fight that led to noses bleeding or the lips being broken. They were just about to continue fighting when suddenly, another person rushed in. Nathan had managed to restrict Simon in that he had gotten a moment of peace. This was something that had happened only because Simon had lost his thoughts and was just attacking. He had wanted to take a deep breath but then, he noticed the newcomer. And from the reddened eyes, he could tell that he was definitely not someone that was here to help at all. "You bastard Nathan. So you are the one that caused my business project to fail? Do you know how much you cost me by doing that? Don't expect that I'm going to leave you alive, even with the protection of the family rules." Nathan wasn't even given a chance to curse before the other party lunged at him. Then, another scuffle ensued as the two of them rolled on the ground, fighting for dominance while using whatever chance they had to land furious blows at their opponents. Simon, who was then free, got to his feet and charges towards the two that were fighting. Since he wanted to take care of Nathan, then, there was no way that he was going to let go of a chance to do just that. He was going to throw a blow at Nathan when the next moment, the two who were fighting like barbarians changed positions. As a result, the punch landed on the other guy that was fighting against Nathan. And having received a surprise attack, the other party was at first stunned. But in the next moment, he was infuriated as he yelled at Simon. "So, the two of you are collaborating in this? Then just fine, I'll deal with the both of you, more so you sneaky rat." And the moment that he finished that line, he ignored Nathan and charged at Simon, who was just in the process of throwing another jab. Simon's only thought at this moment as he faced the newcomer was that this guy wanted to prevent him from killing Nathan. And since that was the case, then he would simply deal with him first before he got to Nathan. So, he changed the target and attacked the newcomer with all his might. Nathan finally let out a breath of relief when he saw the two engaging in a fight. He had never expected that another person coming over was a blessing to him as it relieved him from the fight. Since the two of them were fighting each other, then he would let them do as they pleased. He would simply have to excuse himself so that he could leave them enough fighting ground. He limped towards the staircase that led to the floor below. He wanted to get as far from this place as possible. He had to organize his thoughts so that he could deal with the situation where several of his secrets were being revealed one after the other. Just as he got to the stairs, he was stunned to see that there was yet another person that was charging towards the upper floor on the stairs that he had just planned on using. And just like the other two, his eyes were red. The moment that he spotted Nathan, he yelled, "There you are! There is no way that I'm going to let you go in a single piece. I'll definitely have to get a piece of you for." At this point, Nathan wasn't even willing to know what the other party was saying. His only thought at that moment was, "Why does everyone want a piece of me today?" While all of this was going on at the Jesda Manor, a day before, Jack was seated inside his room inside of the villa at the Serenity's residential area. His eyes were shining with great expectations as he looked at the screen that was blinking in front of him. It was finally the time that he had been waiting for all this while. The month had finally ended and it was time for him to start reaping his rewards. The income of the companies is coming up next. As the system prompt appeared in front of him, Jack took a deep breath as he decided to watch as the system prompts were going to appear in front of him. It was quite excited, looking forward to the types of rewards that he was going to receive this time. He had already started a few businesses this time that was supposed to have the first income reward. And that was what was making him more excited. Although the income that you was going to earn was going to be multiplied by 100. That didn't change the fact that he wasn't much interested in money as he already had over $200 billion in his account. You have earned $70.5 million from Good Vision Security Limited. Multiplier applied. You received $7.5 billion. You have earned $105.5 million from Brightway Medical Research Center and Hope Hospital. Multiplier applied. You received $10.5 billion. You've earned $306 million from Serenity Residential Area. Multiplier applied. You received $30.6 billion. You have earned $252,500 from Eden Residential Building. Multiplier applied. You received $25.25 million. You have earned $217.03 million from Calmond and the Rose Entertainment Companies. Multiplier applied. You received $21.703 billion. First income. As a reward, you gain professional script writing and song writing skills. No missions needs to be completed so that the host can gain the skills permanently. You have earned $50.8 million from Glaze Hotel. Multiplier applied. You receive $5.08 billion. First income. As a reward, you gain professional chef skills. No missions need to be completed so that the host can gain the skills permanently. It was only at this point that the barrage of system prompts stopped. Jack's eyes stared fixatedly at the space in front of him. System, where is the first income reward of the Eden Residential Building? Jack asked. Eden Residential Building was the first income reward of the Serenity Residential Area. As a result, there is no first income reward for it. To say the least, his eyes showed a great hint of disappointment. He had been expecting more than what he had received, to say the least. Although he had expected that the system wouldn't grant him the first income reward, he was still hopeful. Although it was true that he had received a lot of money, what he had been expecting was that he was going to receive a lot more assets or businesses that he was going to manage. But the end result of it all was that he had received 3 different skills. Although it was true that he didn't need to complete a set of missions so that the skills could become his permanently, he didn't enjoy the feeling of gaining them at all. The reason for all of this was that all the skills that he had received while those that he didn't need at the present time. Script writing, songwriting, professional chef skills? He wasn't going to dab into the entertainment sector at all. He didn't want to be a singer and neither did he want to be an actor. Although these 2 skills could be used to promote the entertainment companies that were under him currently, this was something that would be considered a long-term investment. As for the chef skills, he already knew how to cook. Although he wasn't that much skilled in cooking, at least it was to a level that they considered good enough for him. Although he had a lot to complain about, there was nothing that he could do considering that the system had already been updated. Now, no matter what he did or said, the system would not change its decisions. System, can I at least get an explanation on why I got the skills and not assets? Although he wasn't going to change the rewards that he had received, there was no harm in understanding what was going on. The host must know that the first income rewards the host has received came from the assets that he was rewarded by the system. And as a result, the system can decide on what kind of reward the host is going to receive. Since the previous month, the host received assets, then this time, the system decided to award the host with several skills that could be used. The host has to note that all the schools that he has received are related to the source. Furthermore, they can be used to boost the company in such a way that the host can go ahead and monopolize the industries easier. In other words, the system hopes that the host can complete the conditions for upgrading his authority of the system faster. Since the host currently has several businesses under him already, then the system saw that it was good for the host to make sure that the current companies that were under him were on a top-notch level. Jack took a deep breath as he listened to Angel, who was explaining what the system had done. After thinking for a while, he found that the explanations from the system were making sense. Although he could not use them personally, the skills that he had received could be used in such a way that they would boost the companies that were under him. Does the host want to claim the rewards that he had received? It was only after seeing this system prompt that Jack remembered that he had not received the rewards that had been granted to him. Go ahead. Jack immediately acknowledged. He wanted to know what was contained in the skills that he was going to receive. It would be good if it would be the improved version, just like the computer mastery that he had received. Like a surging tide, several fragments of memories emerged in his mind. What followed that was that Jack felt somehow uncomfortable as he got familiar with several things that were strange to him. His mind began racing as his thought process rate increased. Several ideas appeared in his mind, several recipes also appeared in his mind. His muscle memory was enhanced in such a way that he felt that he could do something that he had never done before. Additionally, he felt that his mind had become somehow clearer than it was before. This was the first time that this had happened other than the time that he had received the professional combat skills. When he received the professional driving skill, professional basketball skill or professional human language mastery, it was just the enhancement of his muscle memory or the appearance of the fragments. The only time that receiving a skill changed him was when he received the professional combat skills. At that time, not only had he become stronger and faster, but his mind capacity had also been increased. Now, this was another time. Angel, do you have an explanation about what is going on? The moment that Jack finished receiving the skills, after he was sure about it, he immediately questioned. They had the number of skills that the host receives or gains, the higher the mental capacity required. And as such, if the mental capacity is lower than the required threshold, then the system would improve it in order for the host to accommodate the new skills that he is receiving. Jack finally understood what was going on. Every time that he received a skill from the system, he had always been receiving several types of information in his mind. And since each and every one of them was so much detailed, then it was obvious that his memory was occupied at large. For his mind to be able to store this large pile of information, then it is true that he needed great mental capacity. Every human had his own limit. Even the number of the things that the brain could remember was limited. If one tried to force things, then it would be a scenario where you would master Z while forgetting A. Jack took a deep breath. It seemed that he had to do a lot more so that he could upgrade the system authority that he had. In doing that, equal to perhaps get more advantages from the system. Although what the system had in store for him after he upgraded his authority to the second level was currently not well known, he was sure that it was going to be better than what he was receiving now. And if what he was receiving currently was already enough to make him stand at the top of many people, then it was going to be a wonder about what he was going to receive during the time that his authority would average the second level. Okay then, I guess that it is time for me to look at the amount of money that I have received this time. I've got a lot of money, but I have yet to start spending them fully. Jack muttered in his heart as he took out his phone ready to check the balance. It was no doubt that he already had more than $200 billion in his account. Now what was left was to check the accurate balance that he had. Flyer's bank savings account balance is $356,389,170,138. Jack took a deep breath as he looked at the balance that was shown on the screen of his phone. He really had a good amount of money that he could utilize to start several businesses. Although he had failed to get something good from the system this time, that didn't mean that he was going to let this go during the following month. Other than exploiting the system with all that he could, what he wanted to do was to complete the task that the system had stated so that he could upgrade his level of authority in the system. That aside, he took out his laptop and placed it on his lap before he once again began typing. He wanted to make sure that he dealt with Nathan as soon as possible. There was one thing that he had come to know, that was the fact that Arthur was Nathan's son. As such, as long as he dealt with Nathan, then, he would make Arthur lose his abilities. Although he wasn't afraid of Arthur at all, that didn't mean that he wasn't afraid that Arthur might decide to play a game in such a way that he would go after Celine and her parents. That was something that he really didn't want to see happening because there was no way that he could guarantee that he would always be there to save the day. Although the family had already gotten stronger after taking the body-strengthening solution, that didn't mean that they were invincible when facing bullets. With the connections of the Jesda family, Jack wasn't a fool to believe that it would be something hard for Arthur to get a gun. And if he intended to murder Celine or her mother, then this would be something that he would regret if it really happened. The best method of defense is offense. Other than taking revenge for the death of his mother, he could as well make sure that Arthur would not cause any troubles for him in the future. Jack's plan for the day was simple. He was going to make sure that all those that were present in the Jesda family, as long as they had suffered from Nathan's actions, then he would make sure that they would attack Nathan. There were those that had lost not only their loved ones, but even those that had failed in completing the tasks that had been granted to them. All of this was simply because of Nathan. And of course, Nathan would have hidden all of these. And this was the exact reason as to why he was going to work so hard so that he could reveal all the secrets that Nathan had on him all this while. With a smile etched on his face, Jack began exposing the secrets to the related people, one after the other. He would make sure that the way that he sent the information was in such a way that the receiver would not be able to track it back to him. One by one, he sent all the secrets, the assassinations, the blocking of deals and so on. All of these shady deals were the things that he had gotten the previous day that he had hacked into Nathan's email and computers. Not only did he find the messages, but even the recorded calls of the chat between the two parties. Although the calls were end-to-end encrypted, that was nothing in front of Jack's computer mastery. After about 30 minutes, Jack was done. It was finally time for him to do something else. Setting aside the laptop, he looked towards the stairs where he saw that Celine was coming down. She looked dashing in her training tracksuits. The red tracksuits that she was wearing clearly outlined her enchanting figure. She sure would make a lot of men to drool. But of course, Jack wasn't amongst them. He was free to look and he would not be reprimanded. "What are you looking at?" Or he was wrong, as Celine asked with a frown on her face. Jack knew that she was just joking. "I'm looking at my girlfriend," Jack stated as he rose to his feet. "Humph," Celine harumphed as she continued with her descent. Today was when they were going to continue with the training. It was already evening and Celine had already gotten back from work. The duo then walked out of the villa and went to the backyard of the villa. There was ample space there where Jack could continue training Celine on what she was supposed to be doing. This was something that they had been doing for a while now, and it would continue the same way for a good period of time till Celine was at a level that Jack thought that it was good enough. As Jack and Celine continued with their training and enjoying their time together, things were getting out of hand in the Jesda Manor. The day that Nathan was attacked, he was sent to the hospital. That was simply because he had been thoroughly beaten up. People kept on coming after him, one after the other, and each one of them wanted to have a piece of him. And as a result, he had received a good beating and ended up having several of his bones broken. Although there was a family rule that was supposed to protect him from the injuries that he had suffered, there was no way that a crowd of angry folks could care whether there was a family rule or not. What they cared the most about was the fact that Nathan was the one that was involved in their losses. They had always been crying about the losses that they had suffered, days in and days out. And they had never known who it was that had made them suffer their losses. By the time that he was saved, he wasn't in a good shape. He was just lucky that there was none of those that had attacked him that had used a weapon when they were beating him up. Currently, Nathan was in the hospital. He was guarded by several members of the family that could be considered as neutral, as they had never been in a feud with Nathan and neither were they his allies. They were the ones that had been assigned to make sure that not only did Nathan not get away during the period that he was being treated, but they would also make sure that none of those that had suffered due to Nathan's actions could take the chance to deal with Nathan. Though, at this point, Nathan cared nonetheless about those that had attacked him. What was going on in his mind at that moment was just how it was that all the secrets that he had been keeping were exposed. Although he thought that the secrets being exposed was nothing big considering that there was a person that could hack into his phone and other electronics that were somehow linked to his email, then it was nothing for the information being revealed. The main problem here was the fact that he had actually suffered from the beatings from some people in the family. And each and every one of them had come to find him because they had found out that he was the one that was involved in the losses that they had suffered. What was even more incredulous was the fact that each and every one of them came with only the knowledge of what they had lost because of him. That meant that the other party had known about them, sorted out all the information before he sent them to the respective receivers that were related to the pieces of information. Although I'm not sure about who it was that had leaked out most of my secrets, it has to be someone that knows about me and the others in the family, their schedules and their tempers as well. Nathan muttered in his heart as he looked at the ceiling of the room that he was in. It had already been a week since he was brought here. Although the injuries were not giving him any troubles due to the medicine that was used to relieve him from the pain, he was still hurt, his pride was hurt. And yes, all those that had gone up to beat him were those that were known for their short tempers. As such, they would completely ignore the family rules and do what they thought that would make them feel better. The only person that I can think of, the one that can be behind all of this should be Jonathan. He is the only person that knows that he is going to be in trouble once father or the other uncles know that he was the one that had attacked Arthur. Although he may not have the skills to manage to hack into my information, that doesn't mean that he cannot hire a person with those skills. Nathan gritted his teeth in both anger and frustration. To say the least, he had come to hate Jonathan to the bone at this moment. All the other times, he had always thought that the others were things that blocked his path to success. As such, as long as a person was at the same level or at a level lower than him, then he didn't think that the person was worth becoming his enemy. But now, although he wasn't happy with the fact that he was actually dominated by someone that he thought so low of, he had no choice but to point at that person as his enemy. These cursed duo. First, that stupid Anne made sure that our generation would not be able to take the position of the family head. And now, Anita's son is the one that is trying to make sure that my son, the only way to power that I had, lose a great chance of becoming the family head. FCK that family rule, FCK those twins. I really hate the ones that set some stupid family rules. What the FCK with? If one of the people of a certain generation runs from home, then that cursed generation should not be allowed to steer the family. Things went just as Jack had expected. The enemies that Nathan had created for a long period of time due to his hunger for power were the ones that had become his source of falling. Although they could be said not to be as powerful as Nathan, but when they were backed up by the family rules, they were as strong as pillars that were made from steel and concrete. Nathan was taken to the family head's villa that was located on the northern part of the manor, the moment that he was released from the hospital. Although he had yet to be healed from the broken bones, he was still good enough so that he could at least move using the wheelchair. The moment that he was brought before his father and uncle, Nathan saw this as his opportunity to report what Jonathan had done to his son. But before he could even say a word, the family head who was also his uncle spoke first. Nathan, are all the charges against you true or false? Nathan's uncle was an old man whose hair had already turned gray and there were even some of the strands that were already white. He was husband Jesda. He was currently wearing a casual black trouser and a shirt. This was the way that he usually dressed up when he wasn't involved in some of the serious business issues. Currently, he was seated on the master chair in the conference room that was present in the villa. There was a long table that was occupied by all those that were attending the meeting, consisting of about 50 people. Seated on his right was Nathan's father, who was also the second in command of the family, Benjamin Jesda. On the left side, there was another old man who was just as old as Hesbon. He was Hesbon and Benjamin's cousin, Alfredo Jesda. Basically, those three were the current pillars of the Jesda family. As long as any of them was displeased with any of the people in the family, then that person was bound not to have a good life in the family. As for the others that were filling the numbers in the room, they were the ones that had suffered under Nathan's actions. Although there were some that held high positions in the family and were thus allowed to come over and spectate the questioning, there were only 3 of them. Nathan was stunned by the question that was posed towards him. All along, he had thought that, the moment that he arrived here, he would not be a criminal, but the victim. After all, for him to be beaten up to the current state where he was forced to be moving around on a wheelchair, this could be said that it was the ones that had beaten him up that had broken the family rules. As the victim, he had been ready to use the chance that they would be questioning them to make sure that they passed a good amount of punishment to Jonathan. What he wanted for Jonathan at that moment wasn't a simple house arrest or denial to be involved in the family business. What he wanted was for Jonathan, a person that he considered his enemy, to be disowned from the family. As long as the family head gave the judgment, then there was no doubt that, no matter how much Anita begged, she would never be able to make the decisions that were made to be changed. As such, although his son would still be a cripple, according to the family rules, he had not done anything that would disqualify him from competing for the position of the family head. What is going on here? Am I not the victim? Look at me. Am I not the person who is on the wheelchair at this moment in this house? Nathan questioned as he looked at the three pillars of the family. Nathan's father, or Jack's and Jonathan's direct grandfather, Benjamin, squinted his eyes at Nathan. A flash of anger could be seen passing through his eyes as he stared at Nathan. In the end, he said nothing because he didn't want to talk before he was given the opportunity to do so. Although he and Hesben were brothers, this was a family meeting and there was hierarchy here. As such, as one of the pillars of the family, he had to set an example by following the family rule that stated that, as long as he family head spoke, as long as a person wasn't given permission to speak, then, he was not allowed to do so. Hesben narrowed his eyes as he looked at Nathan. He then asked, "Answer the question that you have been asked, Nathan. You're the one that is being questioned here and not us. So, tell me, are all the charges that have been placed against you true or false?" Nathan was infuriated by the fact that he wasn't even allowed to bring up the issue where he was the one that was currently suffering by sitting on the wheelchair at that moment. Of course not. Where is the evidence that proves that I'm the one that was behind whatever it is that they are trying to put on my head? Let them bring the evidence forward so that I can see what made them so arrogant that they dared to come forward and point fingers at me. This is all a sham that they are trying to use so that they can make sure that they evade the punishment for attacking me in the first place. Furthermore, isn't this a way that they are using just because they think that I'm too successful and they are jealous of me? Nathan's shout and words caused all those that were present to be stunned at first. What followed next was the fact that, all those that had been wronged by him in the past or in the present, all of them stared at him with ferocious gazes. The gazes were so penetrative that even Arthur could feel them although he wasn't looking in their direction. But all the same, he ignored them all. "Okay then. But I hope that what you have said is the truth. If not, you will be judged for the mistakes that you were first brought here for, then, you would be charged for the mistake of lying to our faces." Hesben spoke coldly. The next moment, he looked at one of the people in the room. This was a person that had high authority in the family, second only to the current elders of the family. He went ahead and started the projector. Then, several images began flashing where the projection was being dropped at. The images that had been projects were those that consisted of Nathan and several people who were considered not to be in good terms with the family. Just from the images that were shown, those who were looking at them could immediately tell that, the two sides were not fighting, but were instead making a deal and were both comfortable in each other's presence. Nathan's blood ran cold the moment that he saw the projected images. As they slid to the side to make way for the next image, his heartbeat had already began beating erratically. Those were the images that he had never expected that they would be found. What was even more incredulous was the fact that, the person or people that had taken the images were so close to be able to clearly take the photos that showed even his facial expressions. Who the heck was stalking me all this while? Is this even according to the family rules? This is completely unacceptable to me. Tell me, who is it that dared to mess with my privacy? Nathan shouted in anger and exasperation. If Jack was here, he would have simply snorted at him. Who the heck would talk about privacy when wherever it was that he was making deals with those people was a place that had several CCTV cameras? That was just how Jack had managed to find the images. He simply took the videos from the footages, recent ones, then, he took screenshots before he sent them to the family elders. That was the reason as to why, all those present, even the one that was controlling the projector, save for the elders, were stunned when they saw the images. Even when Nathan shouted about injustice, none of them heard him because they were just too shocked that Nathan was actually doing something that was considered as a taboo in the family. The family rules would never allow a member of the Jesda family to make deals with those that they considered as enemies. And, it was precisely those that Nathan had been making deals with that were the biggest enemies of the Jesda family. Before they could sink deeper into their shock, Hesben cleared his throat. The moment that the one that was controlling the projector returned to his senses, he continued playing, showing what was up next to be projected. One by one, pieces of evidence that pointed towards Nathan's actions that had caused several people in the family to suffer or even some getting killed. Additionally, there was even the evidence that showed the ways that he had been communicating with the assassins that had attempted killing Jonathan. After about an hour, all the pieces of evidence were presented before the eyes of all those that were present. Then, all eyes fell on Nathan. At this point, Nathan's face was as white as a sheet of paper. This time, he knew that he was in for a great deal of trouble. True to his thoughts, he faced a great deal of trouble. Not only did the family head decide that it was already enough that he had made so many people in the family to suffer, but he had also broken so many rules at that moment. As such, the family head had decided that, from that moment on, Nathan would no longer be allowed to participate in anything that related to the family business. Additionally, in the future, he was no longer going to be a member of the Elders' Council. This was something that most of the people were proud of once they were given the chance to be one. At the end of the day, not everyone in the family could become a member of the Elders' Council. As such, there was just the elect few that had the chance of getting the position. Those that occupied the top of the Elders panel were those that came from the family of the current family head. A good example of that was Benjamin. Since it was his elder brother that had taken the position of the family head, he had gotten the chance to become the second in command in the family due to the relationship that he had with Hesbon. With Nathan's relationship with both Arthur and Jack, he could have managed to get a very good position as long as either of them managed to acquire the position of the family head. As for Anita, she was never counted in such a family that thought highly of only the male child. Apart from that, they had also decided that all the assets that were under his name to immediately be removed under him. Then, they had made sure that he would no longer access anything that would link him to the outside world. Jack's life had been quite different all this time. He had continued training Celine, who never ceased to amaze him with how fast she improved. She had managed to grasp so many things that he had taught her, and of course, for her to complete her training, some gangsters had to suffer. As such, the two of them continued with their routine of going around the city, looking for the gangsters before Celine beat them up. And if there was one that managed to wound Celine or he talked to her in a not so proper manner, then he would make sure to give that guy a good beating after Celine was done with them. That was just how he did things. Although he was protective of her, it wasn't to the extent that he would try to hinder her progress when it came to training that concerned her real life. Due to the two of them, there were now even less gangsters present in the city. Unknowingly, every day, there would be a group of gangsters that would be taken to the hospital with several broken bones or were unconscious. This was how Celine did things. She would become ruthless to those that dared to do something that she didn't like. As for those that she had provoked first, she would simply give them a beating before leaving them unconscious. The police that were in charge of making rounds around the city, to try and prevent several cases that usually happened every day, were stunned as days moved on. During the first 2 weeks, they had noticed that the number of gangsters in the streets had suddenly reduced. This was quite unusual to them because they had tried several times to go around, making sure that the number of criminal cases in the streets went down. In the end, they only managed to find a temporary solution, whereby they patrolled around the city at night. In the end, this was only temporary. The gangsters had managed to make the patrols useless by having some people watch. Once they noticed that the police were coming over, several phone calls would be made. Furthermore, there were even some of them that tried provoking the police when they were making the calls. "Hey guys, the cops are coming over. They seem to be looking for you. Bro, some cops are heading your way. They want to play around with you. Do you want to join them?" Statements like those were made once in a while. The police could tell that they were trying to help each other out. But in the end, they could not arrest them simply because they thought that the other party was actually preventing them from completing their tasks. "Officer Olivia, do you perhaps know what's going on? According to what we are used to, we can always arrest at least 5 gangs that were committing some crime somewhere. Then, last week, we could only get 3 gangs. But now, it's so hard to get a single gang that is committing a crime at this moment. Although this should be something that we should be happy about, I doubt that we can be happy without even knowing why there are a few gangsters in the streets with each passing day. And I would be a fool to believe that they would be turning over a new leaf at this moment. After all, there is nothing that they are going to do that would require a large number of gangsters at all." Inside a police vehicle, there were 2 police officers. One a male and the other was a beautiful lady with a valiant expression on her face. The male police officer had short black hair, gray eyes and a well-shaven chin. As for the lady, she had her long hair tied into a ponytail. She looked dashing in her police uniform. Currently, she had a cold expression on her face. As for whether she was listening to the blabbering of the guy beside her or not, that was something that only she knew. She was seated on the passenger seat of the car. They were on the night patrol that day. She was Olivia Desmond, and the guy that was driving was her partner, Brandon. The two of them were amongst the several others that were in charge of doing round trips to make sure that they would be able to reduce the criminal cases during the nights. Brandon, being a partner of such a beautiful lady, he was of course happy, and he would do everything that he could to make sure that he got to her good side. If he could, he really would have wished to date her, but he knew that he was not going to make his moves that easily due to Olivia's background. Her father was the police commissioner of the police force of Kartu City. As such, whoever dared to mess with her, then that person was bound to not have an easy life in the city. They cannot be reforming. There is someone that is going around beating gangsters at this moment. I have done investigation and have found that, recently, the hospitals have been receiving a lot of visitors. Furthermore, most of the people that were taken there were the ones that had broken bones or something along the line. Olivia spoke. Her voice was nice to the ears, other than the emotionless tone that the voice contained. It would make the person feel chills running down their spine rather than be impressed by the voice. Brandon stared at Olivia with widened eyes. In his mind, he cursed, FCK. There goes my chance that I could have used to look cool. Now, I look like a fool for not trying to investigate something like this before. As he cursed, he forgot to look at where he was heading to, and he was the driver at that moment. Can you look at where you are heading to when you are driving? Try to make sure that you don't divert your attention from the road when you are driving. Otherwise, I will have to arrest you once you dare to do something like that again, Olivia stated coldly. Only when he heard her words did Brandon remember that he was driving. Lucky for them, the road was quite clear at that moment. Damn, there goes another chance again. Why am I making a fool out of myself again and again? This can't happen again, Brandon swore in his heart. At the same time, he was wondering what type of partner Olivia was that she could actually arrest him, her partner. Weren't partners supposed to have each other's back? Stop there, Olivia shouted urgently. Because he was still deep in thought, Brandon failed to do as she had asked. So, Olivia, and to repeat herself again, this time, she was louder. I said stop the car already, Olivia shouted as she looked at Brandon with a frown on her face. When Brandon came to his senses, he didn't think twice before he stepped on the brakes as he swerved the car to the side of the road. The tires screeched due to the abruptness of Brandon pressing the brakes. Furthermore, he had pressed emergency brakes. Once the car stopped, Olivia threw Brandon a displeased gaze before she unbuckled the seatbelt and jumped out of the car. Since the car had stopped a distance from the place that she had wanted, she was forced to run. Brandon followed behind her, and although he was a male, he was actually slower than Olivia. She was someone that was stronger than him because she had been training how to fight since she was young. As a result, she was actually stronger than most men. Although he wasn't happy that he was weaker than she was, he had no choice but to run after her. When they entered an alleyway, Olivia suddenly stopped as she looked in front of her. Brandon was puzzled by why she had stopped. But, the moment that he looked in front of him, he actually saw something that made him have his jaw hanging wide open. Just like any other day, Jack had taken Celine out for her usual combat practice. They had found that the number of gangsters in the streets had suddenly reduced. Although this was supposed to be something good, the two of them were not that happy about it because they would no longer have anyone that could be used to help Celine improve her combat experience. Where are all these people heading to? Celine questioned with a puzzled look on her face as she looked at the empty alleyways. Normally, there would be one or two gangsters in each and every alley that they came through. But now, they had suddenly disappeared. This was something that had never happened before, even when the police had introduced the night patrols aimed at the gangsters. Celine was getting somehow frustrated at the fact that Cho was no longer getting her sparring partners. Although Jack would have been the best sparring partner for her considering their relationship and his skills, there was no way that he could give her the best combat experience that she was looking for. She wanted to have a fight where her life would be at risk. Although Jack could as well try ignoring the fact that she was his girlfriend and attack her with the intention of decapitating her, there would always be the times that he would subconsciously hold back. This was just what she didn't want. Jack, who was walking beside her, looked at her with raised brows. When Celine noticed that Jack was looking at her, she turned around to face him. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Could there be something on my face? Celine looked at Jack as she questioned with a puzzled gaze. She wasn't in the know of why Jack was looking at her in such a manner. Celine's question made Jack nearly roll his eyes at her. In the end, he could only reply, "My lovely Celine is so bright when it comes at grasping the fighting techniques that I'm teaching her." But in the end, she has suddenly become dumb that she can no longer analyze the situation normally again. Reaching that point, Jack shook his head with slight dejection. He completely ignored the ferocious phase that he was receiving from Celine, who seemed angered by his words. He simply continued with what he was saying, "I don't want my lovely future wife to be a brute barbarian." Seeing that Celine was about to jump on him, Jack chuckled as he hurried to explain what was actually going on. Alright, I'll say what is going on here. You should know that, during the past month that you have been training, you have injured a lot of the gangsters that were present in the streets. As a result, unless they are healed from their broken bones, they would surely not come back here. And, every day, you will send more to the hospital. As a result, the number of gangsters on the streets is reducing while the number of those that are injured in the hospital is increasing with each passing day. Jack didn't need to say more than that because Celine could already tell what he was trying to imply. Normally, she should have already realized this. But due to the frustration that came with the fact that she had been walking around without finding a single gangster, she didn't even think twice before she complained. Since there are no more gangsters in the streets as some are in the hospital and others are obviously hiding, then, you have got no choice but to be my sparring partner for tonight. And, let me warn you, if you hold back too much during the sparring, then I'll ignore you for the whole week, Celine stated resolutely. In the next moment, she attacked Jack with all her might. She knew that even if she went all out when she was attacking Jack, there was no way that she could beat him. As such, she didn't have to hold back as she always did when she was attacking the gangsters. This time, she had no fear that she might accidentally kill Jack as that was just impossible with her current abilities. She threw a ferocious punch towards Jack's face. The power behind the fair hand that was clenched into a fist was one that could break several bones when a normal man received that punch. But Jack was no normal man as he easily evaded the punch that wanted to disfigure his face. He wasn't ready to have his face in a bad condition even before he married. After that, he didn't attack Celine as he took a step back. Seeing Jack's action, Celine frowned. Though, she didn't stop attacking as she sent a kick towards Jack's chest. At the same time, she shouted with anger clear in her voice. "That's the last warning, Jack. You better fight me seriously or I'm going to ignore you for the whole month." Jack's expression changed when he heard Celine's words. He then asked, "Wasn't it a week before?" Even as he spoke, he used his forearms to block the kick that was thrown his way. It wasn't that he couldn't take the fight seriously. It was just that he was messing around with Celine. "Humph. Dare to ask again and it will be for the whole year that I will be ignoring you." Although her two attacks were deemed useless in front of Jack, she didn't give up as she continued attacking. And this time, instead of evading her attacks, Jack had resorted to blocking her attacks instead. Seeing that his plans were not working, then Jack decided that he would be serious. This was the time that Celine was training and there was no way that he was going to hinder her. As such, he limited his strength to the same level as Celine's and attacked as well. Although the two of them were having the same level of strength, Jack's skills and experience were on another whole level. He had managed to render all attacks that were coming from Celine useless by either dodging, blocking or parrying them. Make sure that you change the angle that you are using when you send a kick. Bend 3 degrees lower than the way that you are. Jack instructed as the fight went on. He was also attacking, giving Celine a very hard time for her to retaliate. But the moment that she made a mistake, then, Jack would correct her. Jack's punches and kicks were nothing but light. He had managed to land several attacks on Celine, thus injuring her in the process. But all the same, he didn't stop simply because he had injured her or something like that. Instead, his momentum continued to increase as the fight went on. As such, Celine was getting fewer and fewer chances of attacking Jack. But all the same, she didn't give up at all. The determination that she had to learn was so great that she completely closed off the thoughts that she was injured or she was at a disadvantage. She continued fighting as if her life depended on it. It was also during this moment that Olivia and Brandon arrived at the scene. They had witnessed how brutal the fight between the two was in that they even failed to know what they were supposed to do at that moment. For Brandon, he was stunned by how beautiful Celine was, although she was injured. The expression on her face as she attacked or blocked Jack's attacks relentlessly would make any sane man fall into insanity. This was the vibe that Brandon got when he looked at the way that Celine was when she was fighting. She was a beauty that was at a slightly higher level than that of Olivia. Furthermore, he could tell that she was strong, even stronger than Olivia was. But, what made him furious was the fact that she was being beaten up by someone, and a man at that. On the other hand, Olivia was paying full attention on the duo that were fighting against each other. At this moment, there was only a single thought that was repeating itself in her mind. It's them. The demonic couple. They are stronger than those gangsters claimed. If they wished, they could have killed them all the moment that they faced off against each other. Jack had already stopped instructing Celine as he continued giving her a lot of pressure so that she could make the necessary changes according to what he had taught her. She was a genius. As a result, it was better to let her adapt to the changes that she was supposed to make when they were fighting. She had to improve her own fighting style so that she could be completely comfortable when she was fighting. And it was due to this that Jack had thought that it was enough pointers that he had given, and it was thus a chance for her to evolve her fighting style to make up for the areas that she was lacking. Although she was far stronger than a normal adult, that didn't mean that she was going to be so good at fighting. No, this all depended on her fighting style that then determined her area of focus, high attacking power, high speed or better defensive capabilities. At this moment, Olivia's mind was running at an overdrive speed as she looked at the display of skills of the two that were fighting. At this moment, her fighting spirit was ignited as she had found someone that showed that he was stronger than her. She really wanted to fight him, although she knew that she would lose at the end of it all. Just then, at the corner of her eye, she noticed something that shocked her to the core. She saw that Brandon had actually taken out his gun and was already aiming at the duo that were fighting. The way that his finger was, it was clear that he had the intention of shooting. "Brandon, stop it right now." She wanted to stop him, but she was a second late. Even before her voice fell, Brandon had already pulled the trigger. And in the next moment, the bullet charged out of the gun's muzzle. Bang! Jack and Celine continued with their sparring. Although they had already noticed the presence of the duo, they had completely ignored them because they never thought that they had committed a crime at that moment. So, even though they were having police officers as spectators, none of them cared at all. Although it was a criminal offense to fight in the streets, who said that they were fighting? They were obviously sparring. Just then, from the corner of his eyes, Jack noticed the moment that Brandon took out his gun before he aimed towards them. This made him frown. From what he knew, as long as he was not having a weapon and wasn't attacking to kill, then, the use of the guns was not allowed. With this thought in mind, he simply thought that the guy wanted to use the gun to intimidate the two of them after he saw that their fighting prowess was out of the world. Although he knew that he would shock the duo that were observing them with widened mouths, Jack cared nonetheless. As long as they didn't interrupt the training session that they were having, then, he really didn't care what they were going to think of him. But then, his expression turned ugly the next moment when he realized that the police officer was actually not joking the moment that he aimed the gun at them. Even from a little over 100 meters, he could clearly see the actions that Brandon was taking. And from the movement of his fingers, the way that his eyes were sharpened, as well as the expression on his face, he could tell that this guy was going to shoot. Jack knew that he had to react as fast as possible before the guy shot. Although he didn't know why the guy wanted to shoot at them, the first thing that he was supposed to do at that moment was to make sure that the bullet didn't escape from the muzzle. But just then, he noticed that Celine was attacking him. Since she was so focused on improving herself, she completely ignored the actions that were taken by Brandon. From the way that Jack could read Celine's moves, he could immediately tell that the place that she was going to be in the next second was the one that was in the path of the bullet. He had already noticed that the guy was aiming at him all this time just from the shifting of the aim that was pointed towards him with every movement that he made. This time, he completely ignored the restrictions that he had placed on himself as he moved at a very high speed. The next moment, he managed to pull Celine as he took her position. And in the very same second before he took her position, he could hear the female officer trying to stop her partner from shooting. But she was too late, as in the next second, the bullet charged furiously out of the muzzle the moment that Brandon pulled the trigger of the pistol that he was carrying on him. Bang! Accompanying the loud sound that came with the shooting, Jack felt an immense force hitting him on the right shoulder. The force of the bullet was so great that it managed to make Jack, who had only taken the position and had yet to stabilize himself, to stumble forward. Although he felt pain coming from the wound that he had suffered, at that moment, his eyes were frosty cold as he turned to face the person that had shot at him. The murderous intention in his eyes could freeze someone. And, it had managed to make Brandon, who was also stunned by the sudden shout from Olivia, as well the inhumane movements that Jack had made, completely petrified. At this moment, Jack was gnashing his teeth as the rage that was in his heart boiled to the extreme. Had he not managed to make the hurried movements to remove Celine from the position that she initially was in, then she would have been hit by that bullet. And checking the trajectory that the bullet had traveled in, had Celine been in her initial position, then, there was no doubt that the bullet would have hit her on the neck. And, that was a very fatal position to be hit, especially with a bullet that came from a gun that was only a little over 100 meters. There were no bones that were strong enough to ensure that the bullet did not threaten her life the moment that it hit. At this point, Jack was not only angry, but he was also extremely scared. He was scared at the fact that, had it not been for the fact that he was fast enough to react, he would have lost someone that was completely important to him other than his mother. Other than Jack, there was another inferno that was ready to erupt from rage. The loud bang that came out from the shooting had immediately brought Celine from her completely focused state. She looked at the shoulder that had just been shot. The blood was already coming from the wound, socking Jack's white shirt red. Her heartbeat was already crazy high at that moment. Although she was completely worried about Jack, at that moment, there was only a single thought that was running through her mind. "You are dead," she muttered coldly as she stared in the direction that Brandon was. The guy was still holding the gun in the original aiming position. The thing that she thought she was supposed to do at that moment was to get rid of the danger that had threatened the love of her life. As such, without hesitation, she dashed towards Brandon. It was also at this moment that her potential fully exploded. Although she was already tired and injured from sparring with Jack, at this moment, there were no other thoughts in her mind other than eliminating the threat. She completely ignored the pain, as she managed to cover the distance of over 100 meters in just 4 seconds, a speed that would easily break the world 100 meters world record. It was also at this time that Olivia reacted. She had been stunned by Brandon's actions. But the moment that she saw that Celine was actually charging at the already petrified Brandon, she knew that she had to do something about it. Although she too felt the chilling killing intent, she managed to move due to the fact that the killing intent wasn't aimed at her. She managed to move just in time to stand between Celine and Brandon. At the same time, she tried talking to the already infuriated Celine. "Calm down a little. Don't be so rash with your actions," Olivia shouted, trying to talk some sense into Celine. "You dare try stopping me from killing the one that dared to harm my husband? Then, you too can follow him to the underworld." As Celine spoke in a cold tone, she didn't stop at all and attacked the obstacle that was placed between her and her target. Olivia's pupils contracted when she saw the punch that was heading her way. She knew that she would not be able to match the strength that was behind that punch. As a result, she decided to dodge. Lucky for her, although Celine at this moment was strong, she wasn't thinking much when she was attacking. So, the moment that she missed her attack, she made a follow-up attack by kicking at Olivia that was just getting to her feet after she had bent down to escape the punch that was thrown at her. Reacting as fast as she could, Olivia managed to raise her arms and block the kick that was aimed at her. Since Celine wasn't holding back when she was attacking, Olivia's arms could not manage to contain the force that was behind Celine's kick. As a result, she was flung away with the sound of cracking bones. Olivia rolled on the ground as she grunted in pain, though she didn't scream as she managed to suppress the pain that came from the pain that she was suffering from the cracked arm bones. She wasn't willing to let Celine kill Brandon. This was something that she thought that, as a police officer, she had to do. Although Brandon had done a mistake by shooting, there was still a court that could take care of the judgment for what he had done. But the moment that she raised her head, she couldn't help but be scared. At this moment, just the little time that she was down, Jack had managed to arrive before Brandon and was holding him in the air by his neck. Aside from his speed, having the ability to hold an adult man in the air using a single arm was enough to demonstrate that he was far stronger than ordinary. "Please, don't do it," Olivia said in a begging voice as she struggled to get back to her feet. She still hadn't given up on the fact that she was an officer and she thought that it was her duty to save a life. Jack, who was staring into Brandon's eyes as he tightly clasped the neck of the guy that was still kicking his legs in the air, turned and looked at her. "There are some of the things that I don't tolerate, no matter who it is. And the one that I can never tolerate is someone that tries harming a person that I care about, especially my wife," Jack stated coldly. The next moment, he used the powerful strength of his left arm to throw Brandon towards one of the walls of the alleyway. Bang! Thud! With a loud sound, Brandon hit the wall before he fell onto the ground. He screamed from the pain that came from having several of his bones broken. Blood sipped from his nose and mouth due to the internal injuries that he had suffered. Jack wasn't the least lenient when he threw him at the wall. He had only made sure that the guy wouldn't die from having his head blown up due to the force of the collision. Brandon, who was on the ground screaming, was forced to momentarily shut up as he was forced to shuttle through the air after receiving a fierce kick from Celine. At this moment, he had already lost his gun.